Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and another video in our Christmas card series in 2025. Today I'm sharing some tips I have for you with, again, mass production, but also making just a different size kind of card. So today's card is going to be a 5x7 card, and I've already created my card bases. These measure 10x7, and then when folded in half on the 10-inch side, they become a 5x7 card. I also went through my colored cardstock and cut 5x7 panels of colored cardstock, and I will list all of the colors below, but I do know that I've got Colorplan. I get all of my cardstock from Cardstock Warehouse. I find that that is the best. I'm pleased with the quality, and I also have a good selection, and I'm also pleased with the price. So I had Colorplan CLARET, I think is how you say it, Racing Green, Sapphire, and Amethyst. And then from Lessebo, I had Amazon. And then I had one that I don't know what it is actually called. And then I have this set from Gina K Designs. It's called Home for the Holidays. And it is this really cute, very simple scene of a home. And that is one of my tips for you today, is to go through your stash and find something that you can either create a very simple scene or that is already a simple scene that you can either, use for the holidays. Maybe it wasn't intended that way, but you can change the colors around it or how it's colored and make it into a holiday card. Maybe you have a house and it's not a snowy house, but if you were to add some like puff embossing powder, or maybe you have a die set that will do like garland or like Christmas lights, maybe you do that on there and you can get more bang for your buck out of something that you already have. But I'm going to use this. Like I said, it's a very simple, already put together scene, so I don't have to do any masking. I don't have to do any thinking. I can just heat emboss this and go. And that's what I'm going to do today. I am heat embossing on some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm using some VERSAMARK ink and some Princess Gold embossing powder from Ranger. And that is what I'm going to do all of these little houses in. The reason why I chose Bristol Smooth, I originally was going to do some watercoloring, and so I was going to use my Canson XL watercolor paper, but I'm actually running low on that, and I wanted to make quite a few cards in this kind of style. So I chose to use my Bristol Smooth because A, I had more of it, and I have not used my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers in forever. I don't even remember the last time I used them. It's been that long. So I really did want to use those again and kind of get that same watercolor look, perhaps just a little bit more easily. So I'm glad that I went this route. You saw me treating my paper with some anti-static powder. That is from Simon Says Stamp, and here is my VERSAMARK ink pad. This is a fairly new ink pad, so it's very juicy. I found that I didn't really have to stamp things twice. I did miss a spot or two on a couple of panels, but that was user error. That wasn't because the ink pad needed to be re-inked or anything like that. You also see at the top where I have little strips of that same cardstock, and all I'm doing is using that to heat emboss my sentiments. I'm heat embossing those in the same Princess Gold embossing powder from Ranger as I am the house. This is another way to save time. So I have a bigger stamping platform here. This is the Altenew Stamp Wheel 2.0, and I am able to stamp multiple things at the same time. This is a huge time saver. If you have multiple stamping platforms, that's not the same as being able to stamp everything in a large stamping platform at the same time. There are occasions where having multiple stamp platforms is helpful, but in this particular situation, having a large one that you can stamp multiple images at the same time is very helpful. And all of those greetings also came from that same Gina K Home for the Holidays set. That is another time saver, and another tip I have for you is if you have something that you can get, your greeting and your main image, or, your greeting and a supporting image, you can pull multiple things from there to complete your card, the better. So in this situation, I was able to pull out one stamp set and have my greeting and my main image, and I was good. So that is another time saver. You're not digging through your stash finding, okay, I want the sentiment from here, and I want the floral from here, and I want the greenery from here, and I want the berries from here. You know, if you have a stamp set that you can get all of the things that you need for your card in one go, that's the best way to go. So you're seeing me just kind of go through and stamp all of these down, and I did this in batches, and that is another time saver, is I do all of the same step in one go. So I did all of the cutting of my cardstock bases I did in one time. I did all of the scoring at one time. I did all of the cutting out of the colored cardstock panels at one time. Here I'm doing all of the heat embossing at one time. Now, because I am doing like 36 cards, I don't have enough room to just do all of my heat embossing at one time. So I did have to do that in batches. I think I was able to do about 10 to 12 panels at one time. And really, as you get going, this doesn't take a whole lot of time. But if you wanted to cut down on the amount of time, I would suggest not heat embossing, but maybe stamping that in something that, in like a metallic pigment ink of some variety, making sure that that is very set before you go to do your color medium. And keep in mind, what color medium you're about to do does depend on what kind of ink you stamp on. So for example, I wouldn't want to do watercolor on an image with watercolor ink. So I wouldn't want to do I wouldn't want to use my positively saturated inks to do like the outline image and then come in with watercolors, because both of those are water reactive, and so you're going to end up losing all of your detail. So keep in mind what color medium you're about to use. That will help determine kind of what ink you're about to use. I just use a piece of printer paper that is a scrap that maybe I've printed on one side. In fact, I know I've printed on one side of this. That just is being used to catch my excess embossing powder, and I can always funnel that around and put that back into the jar. This used quite a bit of embossing powder, but again, I'm making 36 panels here and 36 greetings, so there is quite a bit of embossing here. If you don't have embossing powders, maybe you don't enjoy using embossing powders, maybe you don't have the time to use an embossing powder, I would suggest, but you kind of want it to still have that gold look, I would suggest the Stardust ink from Concord and Ninth. That has a very golden tone to it, and that will dry pretty much instantly. So just be conscious of what color medium you're going to use after that. So once all my heat embossing was done, it was time to color. I did go ahead and use the coordinating die from that Gina K Designs Home for the Holidays die set, stamp and die set, to go ahead and die cut out those greetings. And again, that was something that was very, very helpful to me, was to have a coordinating die for my greeting, because I knew that this was going to be a fairly busy background, and I was concerned. I wasn't entirely sure that the greeting would stand out enough. So I was very glad that I chose something that had a coordinating die set. So like I said, I am using my Strathmore Bristol smooth paper, and I apologize if I end up getting off screen here. I didn't realize that I was zoomed in like I am. But one of the pretty much the only reason why I have this particular paper is it works the best that I have found with these particular markers. And these are Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I have had these in my stash for many, many years. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I do not remember the last time I used them. So this was a great way to kind of go back into my stash, find something that I hadn't used in a while, and use it a lot. I used it a lot. Like I said, I made 36 cards here. I made 6 of each color. And if you can't catch what color I'm using, I will list it below. But I used mid-gray green, blue-gray, Persian green, peacock blue, deep red, deep violet, marine green, shadow mauve, and I'm going to show you cornflower blue in a little while. And I also used the blender pen, and I actually ended up running out of the blender pen, which was kind of a bummer. But then I remembered, wait, I can actually use like water to blend these out. I don't have to use the blender pen. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've used these all, so I was forgetting stuff. But then I remembered when the blender pen ran out, I was like, oh yeah, I can use water. So I ended up going up to my craft room and grabbing a water brush pen. It has like a reservoir of water in it, and I used that to blend the colors out. And I actually think that may have worked better. It just, I feel like I got more movement of the ink that way. That may just be not having used this medium in so long, I forgot how things worked with it. Or I don't do a whole lot of watercoloring, and so that may be another component of not really like remembering how things go, or how I best used this medium for me. So let's talk a little bit about the coloring here. So what I did on the roof there is I originally was just going to put some of that gray, make it look like it had a gray roof, and just use the gray as kind of like a shadow. But I ended up thinking that that wasn't going to be enough color. So I don't think I show you in this one, but I do end up going back and essentially coloring an outline around the roof, and then those little kind of scallop shapes on the roof. But I don't color in the snow with any of the grays. I leave that white. I do come back later and I'll show you what I do with that to kind of jazz that up a little bit. But I ended up essentially getting a good layer of gray over that entire roof instead of just kind of like the detail layers. And I use the blender pen to do that. So here I'm taking, this is one of the darker blue colors, and all I did was do an outline around the edge of this left-hand section of the house. And then where those heat embossed kind of detail layers are, I would do a line of the color there. And then I would use the blender pen to kind of smooth things out, and to get that color to flow. And I did this throughout all of it. One of the things that I did is I took a brown and I went around the entire trim. And if you see how sharp of a point this goes to, is super helpful, because some of the details, particularly on the door and on the windows, is super, super fine. So I was able to get color in there because that tip is so sharp. So here you see me putting little dashes where I kind of want there to be some more color, some details, and then I'm going to outline this middle section of the house and around the door, and then I'll go and put those little lines in there, and then I'll use the blender pen to blend everything out. So I did this for all of the houses. I'm only going to show you one just because it is the same process. It's just a different color. So I wanted there to be a purple house to go on the purple colored backgrounds of cardstock. I wanted there to be a blue house that goes on the navy colored cardstock, and so on and so forth. So that's what led me to these particular colors of markers. I felt like they were the closest I had in my stash in these markers to match the cardstock that I was using. But it is the same process. One of the ways that this is a good process for me is that I was using 6 different colors, so I wasn't getting bored. That is a way to kind of, sometimes you can get bored with the mass production process, but changing colors is a good way to help you not get so bored. so that was kind of my thought process there. Uh, I was afraid I was going to get really bored. I knew I wanted to make a bunch of cards in this kind of style. And so having a small but good selection of colors to choose from helped me keep from getting so bored. What I ended up doing is taking these downstairs and watch college football was on at the time of me making these cards. I was able to do that. I was able to um, color when my kids were eating lunch. Um, and they ended up trying to color with me. So that was a good way to kind of pull them away from TV and get us doing something together. So I was able to kind of do this downstairs and still be with the family, but have my hands busy and feel productive. One of the things that you could do if you were not mass producing this is there you see me scribbling the marker off. So if you're about to switch colors, you want to kind of scribble that color off until it starts to come out clear. Here you see me kind of thinking, okay, this door looks weird. So I am going to end up coloring that door in brown on all of them. I am going to put a little bit of color in the windows so they don't look white. I didn't want to do yellow. I didn't want to introduce another like color, but I wanted there to be some interest in those windows. Now, those windows are pretty teeny tiny, so I just did a very pale, pale, pale blue, just so that it would look like glass. Uh, and like I said, on the roof, I did end up coloring that all in gray, um, just to give that a little bit more color because I was afraid it would get lost or look kind of strange because I knew that cap of snow on the top of that roof was going to stay white completely, and I felt like it just wasn't reading quite right. So I did color in. What I ended up doing to help kind of speed the process along is I went through and I colored in all of the roof on every single panel. I colored in all of the windows on every single panel. That way I only had one color in my hand. I could go through and color all of those. I was less likely to forget something or miss something if I did it that way also. And then I went through and I would color 6 of one color of a house. And then I would color 6 of another color of a house. And that's how I helped speed the coloring process along. That's how I helped myself from getting bored. And I think they turned out really, really nice. They look kind of weird in the pictures, I'm not going to lie, but I feel like they looked better in person. So that's what I did with all of those. Once those were all colored, I did go ahead and add some shimmer to the parts that are going to look like snow. But we will get to that in a minute. So I wanted there to look like there was snow on these colored panels here. So I laid out a flour slat cloth and I'm going to do some acrylic paint splatter. Now you could use gouache or watercolors or metallic watercolors would be pretty. You could use perfect pearls. I just wanted there to look like there was snow. And so I am taking some folk art wicker white acrylic paint and I'm putting it a gigantic blob onto an acrylic block. I should not have done a blob this big. Do as I say, not as I do. And I am just putting a little bit of water in there to thin it down so that it gets to a more splatterable consistency. Then I'm going to take this cheapy number 10 round Plaid is the name of the brand brush, and I'm going to brush on kind of flick on this snow from the edge of the acrylic block. I have tried to put spatter on in various ways, and this is the way that I have found works the best for me. And I think I picked this way up from Christina Werner. She does something very similar. Actually, I think she does this exact thing where she kind of flicks it on from the acrylic block. I was getting some really fine spatters and then I was getting some like chunks. And I found out I was getting like big blobs because it was actually dripping from my acrylic block. So that was user error, but this seemed to work out really well. I did have to kind of rinse and repeat, so I would have to add a little bit more of the paint and then a little bit more of the water just so that I could get all of these panels splattered to the amount that I wanted. And I was trying to make it look like it was in a there was snow coming down. So I would do this for all of the panels and I would set them off to dry. They did not take very long to dry at all. Even those big, huge blobs did not take very long to dry. So this was a good call. Once that was done, I did take, this is the cornflower blue. I forgot I was missing a color. So, and that is showing you the roof as well. I wanted you to see that the roof is actually sparkly, and how I achieved that was using a Spectrum Noir clear glitter brush pen to add some sparkle to the places that I wanted there to be snow. So I did that at the top of the roof, I did it on kind of the awning, and then I did it at the snow at the base of the house. And this is how I did all of them, just to give it a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more interest. Now I'm going to go ahead and die cut all of these houses out using the coordinating die, and then we are pretty much ready to assemble. I went ahead and cut those 5x7 panels down a 1/2 inch, so they are actually 4.5 by 6.5, so that I could have a little bit of a white border. I'm going to glue those down flat to my card base, and then I'm going to glue down the house flat as well. And I'm going to glue the house down a little bit more toward the bottom of the card. So it's not going to line up with like the blue, it's going to line up more with the white so that the snowbank blends in a little bit more to the bottom of the card. I hope that makes sense. You'll see it in the pictures what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to actually pop up the same colored greeting with some foam strips. Now, I purchased these foam strips from Amazon. I really like them. They're a decent depth. The backer comes off easily. They cut easily. They're a really nice thin width, so they fit perfectly behind these greetings without me having to cut teeny tiny strips all by myself, which would be very tedious. So that is another kind of time saver for me, is to have something like this on hand. I felt like the greetings were getting lost if I just glued them down flat, and I didn't really want them to cover up the houses too much. I thought the houses looked really pretty. So giving them a little bit of a lift, a little bit of a shadow, helped them pop off from the background a little bit better and help them stand out and be a little more visible. So that is pretty much the whole card complete. I didn't add anything else to them. All I did was the same process you're seeing. I would just glue everything down flat except for the greetings and then pop those up by themselves. And that is the card complete. So I really appreciate you spending time with me. I hope you felt inspired and you will stick around for the remainder of the videos in the series. Until then, we'll see you next time. Bye.